I'm Van Sebastian, here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 10, Episode 15 interview. We'll be talking with Del Blackwater and discussing her novel, Dead Egyptians. So let's get to know our guest. Del Blackwater is a novelist and travel writer based in Wisconsin. Yay! Her life vacillates wildly between a quiet existence in the country and a feverish, risk-centric existence when on the road. Her travels have taken her to 4 continents, and she makes questionable decisions in all of them. While Egypt is inevitably the high water mark of both her travels and her writing, she tries to spend time in other places as well. Dell is the author of Dead Egyptians, which we'll be talking about today, a historical fantasy series set in the Edwardian era. She's also published many times over as a board game and tarot deck designer, notably as the creator of Playlist Wars, a music game. When not keeping busy, she unwinds by taking care of a menagerie of critters and enjoying something she calls porch time. Dell, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Porch time is very important. It should be talked about more than it is.
Well, let's talk about it. We have a second. What is porch time?
Porch time is critical. Porch time is just I'm a workaholic. I bet you both are as well. And when I'm able to carve out a bit of time, I get all of my friends together on the porch, and we listen to tunes. And it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. That is usually enough for all of us.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
We call that couch time, but
that works.
feels like the same thing. And yeah, we have one of those big movie theater couches that 6 friends can sit on. So,
Mhm.
same concept.
Lovely.
Well, let's see. You are a travel writer, you are an explorer, and now you are a novelist. When did the urge to put that pen to paper or to start typing on a keyboard come in?
It's a great question. Because with me, you have to ask yourself, is Dell a writer whose books are about Egyptology, or is she an Egyptologist whose books are her method of contribution? Like, that's my contribution to the field. I'm not digging, I'm not tomb robbing, I'm just writing books. Um, so, what happened was, I never aimed to be a writer professionally. I was a musician always,
Oh,
and
nice.
thank you. When I graduated college in Boston, a couple things happened in Boston. I had access to the MFA's Fine Arts Museum whenever I wanted. I had a reciprocal membership. So I was able to go to the Egyptian collection whenever I wanted to. Now, I was an Egyptologist as a kid. Like, I've been studying Egyptology for 34 years now. If you do the awful math, that means I started studying when I was 7. So this part of my childhood that was kind of dead at the time came back alive when I lived in Boston because I had access to this collection. So I graduated college with a useless degree, as do we all. I should have just studied Egyptology. It's just as
Right. It
useless
had
as
at
the
least
one
been
I
a
got,
passion.
right?
Yeah.
Film
D-
scoring? Why? Anyway, I
Well,
no regrets. At the time, it was my burning desire, and I felt the need to do it, so it's no big deal. But anyway, I graduated college. Two things happened. I got a job in an office, had nothing to do with my degree, like we all do, and I got very, very sick.
oh,
Um, I got really unwell and I couldn't get a diagnosis to save my life. And there was this point in time when I was just like not willing to keep taking the abuse from doctors, right? And I was just like, okay, whatever's going on, this is your moment. This is your moment to say whatever it is that you're going to say. So I was like, it's book time. And I had to ask myself a difficult question, which is, what do you really think you could get a book out of? Right? You have a variety of interests, but what can you get a book out of? So when I asked myself that question, honestly, Egypt was the only thing that I had enough expertise in to get a full book out of. Um, Once the decision was made, the narrator just like kept showing up and wouldn't go away. I knew that he had to be an outsider looking in because Egyptology is a huge field, right? So I want the world to experience Egyptology slowly, like it has to unfold at a certain pace. I can't just like hammer it down onto the reader. There's too much information there. So
Hmm.
it has to unfold at the proper pace. So it has to be like somebody that is an Egyptian goes to Egypt and they experience Egypt in phases
Hmm.
until they get it the way I do. Um, so once that decision was in place, I started writing. There were a couple of things that had to occur before the book could exist. One was research trips on the ground. So, of course, I did my part. As my bio said, I took 5 research trips to Egypt between 2017 and 2024. Um, those were very necessary. I am obsessed with historical accuracy, so I had to fact check myself. I had done the 34 years of book learning. Sorry to put it in those terms. I had
Right.
done the book time, but I wasn't willing to leave it there. It had to be the real thing. So I went to Egypt. I went to all the places I wrote about in Dead Egyptians 1, and also the places I would write about in subsequent books and all of that. Fact checked myself, and I was actually very surprised to see that I was largely correct,
Hmm.
which was a nice little surprise. And my instincts were mostly validated. And one of the odd little things people say about my writing is you never describe Egypt, like you never over describe Egypt. And I always just go, there's a river. You're either on the east part of the river where the living are, or you're on the west part of the river where the pyramids and the dead are. And it looks the way you think it does. There's sand, there's pyramids. Some people have no money, some people have too much money.
Hmm.
Um, and for me, when I'm in my writing, I don't have that need because I'm there, right?
Hmm.
But for the reader, they need that extra description. And so that I'm constantly having to go back and put those descriptions in. But one of the reasons that situation even exists is because when I got to Egypt, I was like, mm-hmm, yeah. And
Nice.
it just all clicked and looked the way I thought it was going to look. And there were less surprises than you might think.
Nice. So before we dive into the meat of the book, we should probably explain the difference between Egyptology and archaeology for folks.
Mm, thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's an
This
important
is
distinction.
it's a very good question and a very delicate question. Um, I am an Egyptologist. You know my credentials already. There are those that say I'm not a real Egyptologist because I don't have that doctorate. Um, so if you go by expert level, I think it's if you put 1,000 hours into any field,
Hmm.
you're an expert in that field. So if you go by those stats, I'm the real thing. But for my detractors, I'll address the question. I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not pretending to be. I don't participate in excavations. Sometimes I crash them without meaning to. Sometimes I just stumble onto them, but I don't participate in excavation. I don't enter tombs. So I have no business being a tomb robber. There are things that I could do. Like I should have studied Egyptology, I should have pursued it. I could work as a conservationist. I could work to preserve cities, to preserve temples. There's all kinds of things that archaeologists can do that are well within my moral code. It just wasn't my path.
Hmm.
Um, Egyptology is a very vain degree. You got to be very privileged to just pick up an Egyptology degree, knowing you might never use it. So if you ever meet anybody that got that doctorate, know that they're a trust fund kid. Make your make your opinion of them accordingly. But it was not my path. Um, Having said that, I do know many Egyptologists, as in archaeologists. A lot of them are Egyptian, and they are my friends. And they know my credentials as well, and we coexist peacefully.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So if I were at an event and I saw the novel Dead Egyptians on a table and I were to look at you and say, wow, what's this about? What would you tell me?
I would say this. Were you obsessed with Egypt as a kid?
Yes.
Really? Is that true? Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, of course. I've been there only once, though. Did a Nile cruise, Cairo down to Aswan Dam.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not kidding. That's actually truth.
yay. That's wonderful. So Does it annoy you when historians only talk about Egypt right until the Roman Empire takes over, when Cleopatra loses Egypt to the Romans, and then
Hmm.
nobody talks about Egypt ever again, as if these people cease to exist?
Hmm.
So that annoyed me too. And Dead Egyptians, here's my photo op.
Look
There
at
you
that
go.
gorgeous cover.
Thank you. That was a co-design between me and David King.
Nice.
Um, I wanted to talk about the birth of modern Egypt. So our story begins in 1902. It is not set in ancient Egypt. The story is that the British and the French have split Egypt down the middle, which is true. And in exactly 20 years, Egypt actually takes back its country from Western powers, which is also true. In 1922, they are independent for the first time in over 2,000 years. Nobody tells this story. Egyptians tell it among themselves, but we in the West are not telling this story. So I thought it was very important to note that Egyptians didn't go anywhere. And there are many incredible stories that take place after the time of Cleopatra. So that's what I did. Also, it was kind of shallower than that too. I just wanted Aleister Crowley to be the villain in book one, and he was there in 1902 and 1904.
Hmm.
So the 1902 was set for me by wanting to write about Aleister Crowley.
That's awesome.
And when I made this decision, another beautiful decision was made for me where I could write this story about modern Egypt. Now, of course, as an Egyptologist, I am obsessed with ancient Egypt, and I had to get those folks in there too. So the way I did that was to have ghosts of ancient Egyptians walking around dead splaining things to the living.
Dead
And
splitting.
they're very cross.
I love that
They're
term.
very cross. They are not happy with what's going on in modern Egypt. The
Hmm.
problem is not everyone can see the dead. Okay, so now we get to the fantasy element of the book. My book is historical fantasy, not historical fiction. There is magic in my book, and it's in order to be considered fantasy, you have to clearly define the rules of the magic and how the magic works,
Hmm.
which I do. So the ancient Egyptians are the concept of them comes directly from ancient Egyptian thought. There's a concept called the Sahu, which is they are immortals, they are godlike beings. They got that way either by passing the seven universal truths, which I get into in the book, or by passing the 42 commandments, which come directly from ancient Egyptian as well. So basically, if you were a saint in life, you became an immortal in death. So these immortals are around, and they're powerful beings. I've said they have magic. They'll use the magic if the situation requires it, but they're also very dejected because it's been 2,000 years since Egyptians ruled themselves. So put themselves in their shoes, put yourselves in their shoes. They're very dejected. They're very demoralized. I don't know if they even believe that their task is really possible. And I doubt the Egyptian people believe that their task is really doable at this point. They're up against the British and the French and the Ottomans,
Hmm.
because the Ottomans are still around in like a puppet ruler kind of way, right?
Right.
So their work is insane. This is truly impossible odds here, and they did pull it off.
Nice. So
Yeah.
you've mentioned Alistair as the antagonist. Who's your protagonist?
My protagonist is Albion Stanley. So I mentioned he had to be an outsider looking in.
Hmm.
So he's a British guy. He is queer. He's unapologetic about his queerness. It's
Nice.
completely normalized in the book. So he has a lot of struggles in the book, but he never struggles with his sexuality. He accepts his sexuality, and he actually thinks he's smart enough to hide. Everyone knows, but it takes him like a full book for him to realize that everyone knows, and that's not really important to the plot. So
Okay.
Let's talk about just him for a second. Albion Stanley, he went to Cambridge. He studied linguistics. He speaks an unknown number of languages, which I never really define. You know that he speaks English, Greek, Latin, French, Coptic, and Arabic very well. Coptic is hieroglyphics. You also he'll speak other languages from time to time. Like you'll hear him break into Welsh and you'll hear him break into Russian, and you never really know how many languages this guy
But
actually
he's a
speaks.
polyglot by nature.
He just has that gift, and you'll learn eventually. um he has that gift because he's lived many lives. Reincarnation is a big plot point in my story. So he reincarnates over and over and over and over again. He always reincarnates into whoever the ruling class is in Egypt at the time. So he was an Egyptian. If you go back far enough, he was an Egyptian, and now he'll just do whoever's in charge. So when Napoleon was in charge, he was French. Now he's British. You know, he was an Ottoman when they were in charge. He was a Roman when they were in charge, because he wants to be as close to the power as possible to help Egypt. So he does everything he does to help Egypt. He is also psychic. So, of course, he can see the ghosts, talk to the ghosts. And it's a burden. It's not really a gift at this point in the story. At least he doesn't see it that way. He doesn't talk about it. He can't talk about it. He's British. Who's he going to talk to about it? Maybe Aleister Crowley a little bit, because Aleister has probably experimented with enough of that. But I'm going to say that's probably the first person he's ever met that he could even breach the subject with. Is it breach or broach?
I think it's broach in spoken conversation.
Broach. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Broach. Okay. So until he meets Aleister Crowley and he has this one person that he can talk to, he's going to self-medicate. He drinks far too much whiskey. He's into the opium. He's into the hashish. He's going to do whatever he has to do to survive. And it's not an addiction story. It's not a story about let's get him out of this mess. It's just a state of affairs. No, this is just how he survives right now. And he will grow. He will get stronger with time. He will be easier with his gifts in time, but not yet.
Nice. So one of the other elements that I saw in the write-up about this was Greek love. So I'm assuming Albion has a lover at some point.
He does.
Is
He has perhaps more than one lover at
just
various
checking.
points. So I have to say that because he will end up with the right person. He
hmm
absolutely will. Of course, there's a love story at the heart of this, because I know how much history I'm throwing at you, and I know how epic this story is and how big it is, and it's complex. And so, of course, I'm going to give you a love story to keep you going. Of course, that love story is very juicy. And of course, those emotions are real emotions, and it's a way for me to talk about past love and all of that. So I can't tell you who the lover is, but it is his lovers are only male. Um, he has no interest in women. And so when I was marketing the book, I had to decide, is this queer fiction?
I was going
Because
to
there
ask
is
that.
enough juice, if you will, to call it queer fiction,
hmm
or is this historical fantasy? And every time I pictured myself walking into a bookstore, I wanted it to be in sci-fi fantasy, because I thought, this is a proper book. This is complex enough to
hmm
be proper fantasy. And I want everyone to read this book. It shouldn't matter if you're a gay man or just into that.
hmm
It should be, you could be into Egypt, you could be a magical thinker, you could just be into fantasy and you're burned out on medieval fantasy and you don't want to read about dragons anymore. I really wanted the whole world to read this book. And so I decided to do that more open approach, where it's historical fantasy, and it really doesn't matter that the protagonist is queer. Like, you'll find out soon enough.
hmm
You'll find out in chapter 4.
Well, I mean, that's sort of the approach that Schitt's Creek took. It was just part of who the characters were, but that's wasn't not what the plot was about.
Yeah, it's normalized.
hmm
And I really thought that the world was ready for it, and I didn't expect any backlash at all. So you can say that I was naive. Fine, I was naive about that. I was really shocked when reviewers would refuse to read the book at around chapter 4 and say, people need to know this book is gay. It's not okay that you don't tell people that this book is gay. And I was like, wait, what are they asking for? Are they asking for a sticker that says gays existed in the Edwardian era? I'm not going to put a sticker on it. That's crazy.
No, and by that logic, then we also have to have stickers that say this is a straight romance.
Yes. Thank you. So of course I'm
That's what
not.
equality is. I'm sorry.
Yes.
And it should just be whatever it is. There shouldn't be
Right.
a reason to label any of these things. You know, I understand it for expedience purposes as far as genre goes, you know, what type of book is it? Okay, fine. But I think when we get down to the nitty gritty, then it's, three-fingered old man with, meets one-legged woman. I mean, we're going to get to a point where we're nitpicking it so far down the tree that
Mhm.
it's just going to be beyond ridiculous. And so I think,
Right.
it's just something that should be, and the reader will just go, oh, okay.
That's
They
it.
discover it along with everything else you're giving them.
Absolutely. And that brings up a very good topic, which is trigger warnings.
Hmm.
If you're writing erotica, readers will expect trigger warnings. My book is not erotica, and there are no trigger warnings because I didn't grow up in that era at all. I never picked up a book in my youth and
Yeah, I
knew
know.
what was in it. You just went on the journey or you didn't. And there's also no way to avoid triggers.
Hmm.
You could pick up a book that's supposedly right for your triggers and then turn over here and you're triggered by something that happens over in the next room. So to me, I am sensitive to PTSD. As a sufferer of PTSD, I understand why people want them, but the book isn't erotica. It's just kind of juicy, so I didn't do it. And also, my book is extremely twisty. You won't really know what this book is until you're at the very last sentence. This is a book that demands a second reading, right? It's so complex, you'll have to go back to the beginning and start over again. Once you know what you're in, then you can enjoy the ride and be like, oh, that's what that was foreshadowing,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right?
The
So
breadcrumbs are very subtle.
yes, it's woven in very smoothly. Like my language is like butter. I write in British English. I write in Edwardian English. Um,
Nice.
but it flows because I'm a musician and I care about the rhythm of words.
Hmm.
Sometimes I put in more words to make the sentence flow correctly. And then there's these editors that are like, just say he went for a walk. And I'm like, no, you're taking the poetry out of the words.
Right.
Um, so anyway, I got off topic there. I don't do those trigger warnings because it would color the reading.
Hmm.
It truly would. There is a trauma. That's not a spoiler alert. Of course, there's going to be a trauma somewhere. There
Hmm.
is a trauma in the book. He gets through it. Uh, and that's the beauty of the trauma, is me demonstrating how he gets through it. So, but if you knew what the trauma was, it would color the entire reading. You would be sitting there shaking, wondering when it's going to happen.
Right.
So I just had to make an adult decision on that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
My final question about the book was one that you wrote that cracked me up. So I'm going to ask it the way you wrote it. Why is the mummy always named Imhotep?
Oh, yes. Thank you for not ignoring Imhotep. Thank you. I, the fact that I almost ignored him is mortifying. Um, Imhotep has been the subject of popular imagination since the beginning. Why is that? Why is it when excuse me, it's early.
It's fine.
Why is it when Hollywood makes a movie now in 2025, they're still going to name the mummy Imhotep? Why
I
has
don't
this
know.
man's legacy lasted that long? He's a real person,
He
right?
was. Wasn't he the one who did the step pyramids, the engineer?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was, and he did so much more. So in life, we know very, very little about him from contemporary sources. We know he built Saqqara, including the Step
Mhm.
Pyramid, which is the first pyramid in history. Yeah, okay, fine. He would be famous just for building the first pyramid in Egypt.
Right.
All we have of him is there's a statue of the king, and this is so indicative of were they lovers or not. Statue of the king. At the king's feet below the king's feet are all of Imhotep's titles, which is all we know are his titles: chief builder, chief sculptor, chief architect, chief physician,
Yep, yep.
high priest of the house of Ra, vizier, bearer of the royal seal. Okay, now two things, really huge things we can glean just from these titles. One is he put the titles below his own feet. That's not an FU to Imhotep. That's saying, I am nothing without standing on this man's greatness. I am nothing without what this man did for me. That's almost romantic when I look at it.
Yep.
And one of the titles is really, really important: Royal Seal Bearer. What that actually meant was he wasn't walking around carrying messages for the king. No, he's not a message boy. He could act as the king. He could sign royal documents as the pharaoh because he had the pharaoh's authority to do so. Now, if that's not a love affair, I don't know what is.
Right.
There was trust there,
Oh
minimally.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Imhotep dies. The Egyptians started worshiping him as a god when he dies. So to this day, you might have been there on a Nile cruise, sir. Did you go to a place called Kamombo?
Yes, with the crocodiles,
Crocodile
absolutely.
temple? You saw the
Yeah,
crocodile mummies?
I did.
And the Nileometer, the well
Yeah.
thing?
Yep.
Okay. So behind Komombo, there's an Imhotep chapel behind the temple. I hope your tour guide pointed it out.
Pointed, but we did not have time to go to it. I know. I know. But we did go to Saqqara.
Saqqara is wonderful. Sa'ara, by the way, is the Arabic term for desert. It just means desert.
It's where we get our word for sugar.
Oh, yes, that's true as well. Are you an Arabic speaker?
Linguist.
Nice. So you go behind Kamombo, and there's an Imhotep chapel, and it's a carving of all of the medical instruments he is credited for inventing. So according to the Egyptians, Imhotep is the man who invented the forceps, the scalpel, and all these other things that we still use in medicine today.
Nice.
So he's worshipped as a Thoth-like god, as a god of wisdom, who's a helper spirit who wants to help the Egyptians read, write, do medicine, build things. You got a problem, take it to Imhotep. He's still the wisest person in the land, even when he's dead. Okay, so now, why did Hollywood make him an evil mummy, though? Right?
Well, I have a theory on that.
You have a theory? Okay, go ahead.
I do. So also having seen script writing in action, it's because when you say it like a mummy, that name is way more fun than Ramses.
That's a great theory, and I'm certain that's part of the equation. Imhotep.
Imhotep.
Imhotep. No
You know
matter
I'm
where.
inserting. You know I'm inserting that from the Mummy in here.
Yes.
Please make it 1932's or 1999's The Mummy.
The
I don't want any
1999.
Tom
That's the one I
Cruise
have.
nonsense in here.
Yeah.
The 1999 movie is a masterpiece. The 1932 movie is a masterpiece too.
I haven't seen
Really
that one.
interesting film. Oh, it's great. So it's a great word to say no matter where you place the emphasis. Also, what was going on in Egypt in the 30s, the 20s and 30s, I'll say, when Hollywood was like, let's make a mummy movie. Who should we make the mummy? Well, they were excavating Saqqara at the time. Saqqara was the new King Tut at the time.
Right.
He was the big name, so they just lifted the name that was the name. And so a lot of people now are going to associate Imhotep as an evil, powerful mummy. I'm okay with it because at least they always make him sexy and they always make him powerful and magical. And I'm like, okay, so you got one detail wrong, but like you're getting most of the story. I'm okay with it.
Well, and he might be angry at the way his homeland had been treated.
I would be.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, is there anything else about dead Egyptians that we didn't think to ask that you want people to know?
I think we covered it, guys.
All right. Are you ready for our get to know you questions?
Oh, it depends on which question.
Well, we've got a
Are
list.
you ready to cut this?
We've got a little list.
Okay. I saw the list. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, before we get to that, I just want to put a shout out to everyone out there. If you're enjoying the content that we're doing here, just realize that we're doing it not only to provide you with a list of authors who do queer works for the queer community, be it wherever it may fall on the spectrum of media, but we wanted to make a repository so there is a historical reference that we've been doing this for 10 years on a weekly basis. And so if you could do a like and subscribe, the subscribe would really help us. We're getting to the point where we're on that 1000K thing and we want to just hop over the fence and get it to start paying for itself.
On YouTube. On
On
YouTube.
YouTube. But you can do it on the other ones too, or wherever we are. But we just want people to be aware that we are doing this and it is a cause on our part. And Vance and I have put our time, effort, and blood, sweat, and tears, including money, into keeping this going. So whatever you can do to help us out, we greatly appreciate and humbly thank you for it. All right, on to our list. Can you name a movie that was better than the book?
I'm going to give you one of my favorite movies, Morris, which is a Merchant Ivory film from the 1980s. I was introduced to the film first. My mom is Russian and she's a huge snob, and she just like force fed me anything British. Even like Benny Hill was okay as long as it was British. So of course I watched the Merchant Ivory films. I'm from that era. And Morris blew me away. It immediately became one of my top three, still remains in the top three films. I watch it, I wouldn't say I watch it once a year. I think I watch it once a season. When the weather changes, it's time to watch Morris again. So incredible film. This would have been the first time in literature that a gay couple was not depicted as doomed or like serial killers or like mentally ill. This was the first time that they were just normal. Yeah. And they really were normal dudes. Morris, he did go to Cambridge, and that's not an accident that my protagonist went to Cambridge. That's a straight shot to Morris. But he was not a brilliant thinker. He was more middle class. And he really needed to be around those brilliant thinkers at Cambridge in order to change his attitudes, which of course he does. Now, the question is the movie better than the book? It's not. I'm sorry.
No, I agree with you. I think one of the things I love about it is that when I read the book, there's the first time he goes to Pendersley, there is a paragraph that describes Pendersley. And to this day, that is the bar that I like to set on writing concisely, but with such beautiful prose, because you see the house in all of its glory and decrepitness, decayingness that's happening. And he just wrote this one paragraph about it. And I had it in my head, even before I was really enveloped by the movie. I had this vision. And then when the film did it, they did a really good job of selecting a house that fit all of that, you know, and that's what I loved about that book, was the fact that he gave me a sense of, this is how you show and not tell, you know, because he just basically just painted a picture with words, but they were very concise. He didn't get verbose on it. It was very clear.
You've got it. E.M. Forster. So the book is better. The language made me cry when I picked it up. Now, obviously, he's an Edwardian. I think the book was written before World War One.
Yes.
You can tell it was written before World War One. It wasn't colored by anything.
Yeah, I think it was
like
1910 when it happened.
Yeah, and so the language, of course, is very elegant, but he's not doing the Oscar Wilde thing where he's going on and on and on and on and on. No. The dialogue is very naturalistic.
Yeah.
And it's how people actually would have spoken, which is like, if I was studying language, I would study Forster, right? Because all these other writers are just sort of showing off and like running circles around the readers because they can, but Forster won't do that. Forster proves he can do that, but he refuses to do that.
It's an artistic choice. It's what he's doing. All right. Well, which fictional character would you most like to be friends with? Emotep. No.
It
You,
is Imhotep. If an ancient Egyptian who knows everything would like to
Yeah.
grace me with his
Yeah.
presence, I will gladly hang out with you. If Imhotep is not available, I feel like Heathcliff and Kathy, while their father was still alive, before things got really messed up for them, while they were just running around the moors, I feel like I would have wanted to run around the moors with them.
nice.
Okay. Well, what's the most facts? Okay, put my dentures back in. What was the most fascinating fact that you know?
Egyptians could melt stone.
Oh, I love that as a
Really?
fact.
Really? You probably went there, Vance, on your Nile cruise. Did you go to a place called Dendera?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I hope your tour guide pointed this out. I really am in the wrong career here if he didn't, or she. Um, do you remember in Dendera, there's all those secret passageways that go up to the roof? There's
Yeah.
these dark corridors, and the budget for this place must have been insane because as you're going up these dark, narrow passageways, there's three-dimensional bas relief sculptures of people walking up the stairs with you. They're all dark. It is a nuts place. Also, look down. The stone was accidentally melted on the stairs. So these stairs were cut into stone, and you can see that. And you can also see that some priest or priestess, it looks like they accidentally spilled like a cauldron of lava or something, and it tumbled down the stairs and melted the middle part of this stone staircase. And
Huh.
this is a huge history mystery how this could have possibly happened. You can tell it's not wear and tear. So you can tell it's not just tread of
Hmm.
people walking on these stairs. No, this stone is melted. Look at it.
Hmm.
So this is arguably a bigger history mystery than how they built the pyramids, but the pyramids always get the
It's got the better
discussion.
PR.
Yeah, they've got the better PR.
Okay. Well, what was your favorite subject in school? Need we ask?
Oh, I liked history, of course, and English, of course, and band was very important to me.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You got to
Music,
have it.
when I was young, was my everything. I could not live without music.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. Well, before making a telephone call, do you rehearse what you're going to say?
I do voice recordings so that I can delete and re-record the voice recordings as many times as necessary. As a musician, I do care about tone, and I'll listen to it back. And if I haven't hit the tone right, I just start over.
Okay. That's a good way to look at it.
Hmm.
Well, what current event or causes are you most passionate about?
Did you have to? Of course, no, it's okay. I'm horrified, of course, by what's going on in this country. A couple of years ago, I was more focused on what was happening in the Middle East, and I still am. But then the thing happened, and I think we are at an all-time high for hate crimes in this country, against women and non-whites and non-Christians, and of course the queer community, including the trans community and the non-binary community. And I am very concerned that um, if that becomes normalized, then really no one is safe. And it doesn't matter if you're one of the targeted demographics or not. If you're living in a country where one person doesn't have human rights, nobody has the human rights. And we're getting there fast. And I do believe in this country, and I do believe in rule of law. I do believe that the courts are fighting as hard as they can. I do believe in the power of protest. I absolutely believe in the power of conscious consumerism, and we should all be very careful of where we're sending our money right now. And I do think that ultimately we turn this around and this madness is temporary, but it is not a fun time to be alive,
No.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. If you could visit anywhere in the world, where would it be?
You know the answer to the
I'm
question.
going to use that as the thumbnail. All of our expressions after I said.
I refuse to answer that question on principle.
Okay.
So what you should do is take a trip to Peru and investigate the mummies there.
Peru and Egypt have actually a lot of crazy overlap. So
Yes.
Cusco, I don't know if you've ever been to Cusco, but the
No.
stonework in Cusco. So people go there because you can see all of the layers of history in the stonework. So like the modern stuff is on top, the modern brickwork is on top. Under that, maybe you see the Spanish style brickwork, but under that is the Incan style stonework, which should
Nice.
not be called brickwork, which is insane because these blocks of stone fit together perfectly, but they're not natural shapes. And
Hmm.
there's no explanation for how they could have gotten them so close together that you can't get a piece of paper in between them. The only explanation, and this stonework exists in Egypt as well. It looks exactly the same too. If you go to a place, the Valley Temple on the Giza Plateau, which is near the second pyramid, excuse me, Khafra's pyramid, the
Hmm.
stonework is very similar. Um, it's almost like they took stones, carved them as close as they could. Okay. First, they got them as close to the shape they wanted. And then it's like they tied them all together, squeezed them together, squeezed them together this way as well in order to get that precision. You can't do that without making stone malleable. So
Yeah.
for sure, Peru and Egypt had the same, like,
Ability.
spirit advising them or whatever. I don't know how they did it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Well, who, if anyone, was your first celebrity crush?
Yul Brenner,
Oh,
Commandments.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I,
yeah.
I have a great story about Yul Brenner that I'll tell you after we record. All right. So finally, what is your personal favorite recipe that you make? And are you willing to share that recipe?
Yes, absolutely. So, I'm Russian, and so I make a lot of recipes that, when I make them, it's the first time for my guests to even have them. Obviously, I make a mean borscht, I make a mean pirog, but I would say the really special occasion meal is we make these savory crepes in Russia. They're called blini. So the crepes are exactly the same as anybody else's crepes. You could just I buy Josie's gluten-free crepe mix and I just make them. I have a cast iron griddle that I use especially for this. But then the thing that makes it Russian is that it's like a savory crepe. So I do fry up an onion, caramelize an onion. You could go crazy with the onions. There's no too much onion in Russian food. We're never gonna be like, you went too
You've
far this
gone too
time.
far. Yeah, right.
No, it's just whatever you got, just slice them up.
Chuck it in.
And then I'm a vegetarian, so I do the fake beef grounds, like the Beyond Beef grounds. But you can use beef if you're that kind of a person. So normally in Russian food, there's a lot of dill, but you don't use dill for this one thing. So the sweetness of the crepe contrasts well with the saltiness of the meat and onions, and you eat it like a little burrito. And I've never had a complaint. In fact, I've had people steal them before I've presented the meal. I've had people go beyond my back and be like, what? Nothing happened.
Love it.
Well, excellent. Well, you made it through our list. Bravo.
Bravo. So what's up next? You kind of hinted a next book at us.
I'm working on book 2. Book 2 is cooking. So weirdly, there is not a mummy in book 1. So of course I had to fix that in book 2.
Right.
So book 2 is the Luxor book. Albion he finally leaves Cairo and goes to Luxor, and he goes to the actual excavations in the Valley of the Kings. Meanwhile, revolution is more of a thing in book 2. Like in book 1, they're like, we should really kick out the British. And they do nothing. And then in book 2, they're like, oh, we really have to kick out the British, don't we? And they decide officially, this is a revolution we're in. We're doing this. How do we do this? Okay, because some things happened in 1905 and 1906. Famously, the Saqqara incident actually and Din Shaweh happened. And so I write about those and how important those were to the Egyptian mindset at the time. And I've also got a workplace bullying conflict in there. Albion will get outed by a nasty colleague, and he has to come to terms with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dun, dun,
So,
dun.
where is the best place for people to follow you to get updates on the progress for book 2?
DellBlackwater.com is the obvious place. I am on Facebook as Dell Blackwater author. I am on Instagram as Dead Egyptians. But I prefer, like, you'll get the news live first if you go to DellBlackwater.com.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love it. Any final words of wisdom?
No, just thank you so much for doing this. This was a really fun experience, and I tend to get nervous about the podcasts ahead of time, and then I do them, and I was like,
You're great. You are good at this. And you know your stuff. That's the
Yeah.
beauty. You know your stuff.
Thank you. It's a
All
pleasure.
right, well, we would like to extend a huge thank you to you, Del Blackwater, for joining us today. Thank you so much. We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you, fans and friends, to new media by queer content creators. If you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. This show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roguepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye now.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.